When should you start talking to your kids about money, and how do you do so? I've got that and more coming up. My name's Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. When should you start talking to your kids about money? And how do you do so? Obviously, you want your kids, if you have kids, ultimately what you want is for them to be financially responsible so that they can save up and that finances aren't a burden, that they can live the life that they're called to and have good experiences, all within moderation and within their means. That's what you want. Also, selfishly, you want them to be self-sufficient financially so that they're not staying in your basement or staying in your house forever. So there's selfish ambition as well, but that's crucial, right? And so the why is this so important? I mean, that's self-evident. And if you think about also with your kids, again, if you have them, and mine, 14, 11, and 6, okay? But 14 is the critical piece here because we're starting to talk about driving as she's about a year away from starting that process or a few less than a year away from starting that process. And think about this. It's just, driving, there's a lot of responsibility so obviously like that's gotta go well, and you wanna teach your kids. Your kids have been watching you drive for their entire lives. They've been in a car with you from time to time, and you're not maybe, from the time they're born or, whatever, saying, all right, I'm taking a left turn and here's how I do that. But they're observing how you behave. They're observing how you handle certain things. They're feeling the sudden stops or the slow stops or whatever it is. And gradually, and this is why I'm bringing this up, as kids get to 13 and 14, you're starting to explain a little bit. When our daughter is in the front seat with me, I'm telling her, okay, here's what I'm doing. I just find myself naturally doing it to help prepare her for it. The same sort of approach should be taken with finances. The issue is your kids aren't seeing you behave financially. They could maybe make some assumptions. Oh, you just paid for this or that, but they normally don't see the cost. They don't see all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. They don't see the big picture. It's not visible to them, and you'd say it's private. So it really shouldn't be. But so again, like driving, teaching your kids how to drive, very, very important. They are observing everything that you do. Finances, very important as well, and they can't see it. So how and when do you start talking to your kids about money? I guess that's the parallel that I would make is you're going to want to start talking to them early so that you start sort of explaining, hey, here's how this works. So I'm going to share a couple just overall principles. Now, there isn't a one-size-fits-all or a perfect way to do it. You know this if you're a parent. You can explain one thing to one child and they look and say, okay, I'm going to do exactly that. And then you explain the same thing to the second child and they're going to look and say, I'm not going to do that. And I haven't figured out the difference. So there is not one way that will work, but the philosophy and principles that I'm going to share hopefully can help you on this journey. And the first is I would tell you, talking to your kids about money and when to do so, know that it's a conversation, an ongoing conversation, as opposed to sit down, have a talk, or give them this book and then you're done. It's sort of an ongoing conversation. And I would start that conversation, again, the when and the how, I would start it when they are able to start comprehending money. And I don't mean, when they're in kindergarten, but preteen-ish, 10, 11, 12, in that range when they're starting to understand what they want and what they desire and what maybe they need. You can start talking about big picture philosophical sorts of things. Now, not showing them how to build habits, but talking about those habits. And I would start that early before they have the chance to start building their own. Start talking about some of the ones, the financial habits that you'd want them to have. And so, that might sound a little bit like, oh yeah, when you get a job, you're gonna learn how to budget, like those sorts of things. Even if you hate budgeting, you'll say something like that. again, not when they're 6 or 5 when it's just going to go over their head, but maybe 10, 11, 12-ish, 13-ish, where they can start maybe understanding and say, oh yeah, well, when you get a job, you're gonna budget. Or yeah, it's really important to save up so that you have an emergency fund when something comes up out of the blue. Those sorts of things. You'll start sharing some of that foundational sort of philosophical and habit type financial stuff. Just not forced, but sort of organically, so that you start that conversation and that they start hearing some of those habits. That is sort of an organic, ongoing conversation, just on the fly whenever it seems to come up. Hopefully it does, but the next inflection point in that conversation is when that child starts having income. Now, that could be, well, my child gets an allowance and therefore they're getting income, so maybe that starts earlier. Or it could be when they get their first job, something like that. And that's where you actually start taking some of those big picture philosophies and start actually applying it to them and working with them. And again, you want to do this early so that you're helping them form the right habits instead of them forming habits before and then you having to change those habits. It's very hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for you. And so you've laid some foundation by inserting some intentional nuggets about money philosophy and how you handle money and some of those habits. And when they start getting income, that's when you start helping them apply those habits. Yep. Okay. So out of every paycheck, or you just got this week's allowance, make sure you're putting 10% away in a savings account and make sure you're doing these sorts of things. Now, if this starting to get income happens as a teenager or something like that, and it's actually wages and earnings, then not only are you going to start talking about, well, here's how much you would save and difference between saving and spending, and then what are you saving up for? If there's something that you want, save up for that too, but you're also going to save up for the things that you that could be a surprise or something like that. But if it's income, you might also have then a platform to start talking about taxes even, which is not fun, but you don't need to teach taxes to your kids, but you could talk about, well, you're going to have to file a tax return. You're going to get a tax form, and this is how that works, and blah, blah, blah. So you could start talking about taxes, just start introducing that concept, and then maybe even saving up not only for something that they want or saving up for just having a safety net, but also saving up for the long term, for the future, and maybe even talk about the benefits of the Roth IRA, that as soon as you have income, there's no age limit on it. As soon as you have income, you can fund a Roth IRA. And so you could even start talking about those sorts of concepts. So again, when your child is able to understand it, start talking to them about money just naturally, because again, they're not sitting in the back seat observing everything that you're doing. So you have to start inviting them into that conversation. And then when they start getting income, that's when you start building some more of those habits, or encouraging them to build those habits and taking that conversation up a little bit. And then the next inflection point is normally when they're getting out on their own, but I would say when they start having regular bills. And this is probably the last stage where you're going to be heavily involved, because then hopefully they're taking it from there. But if they've got the right sort of philosophy, or you've helped coach their philosophy and instructed them on some of the habits to have, then the next thing is, well, how do you just manage income when you have responsibilities? So whether this is, well, you're going to have them pay their cell phone bill, or you're going to have them pay the gas bill or something like that, or gas for their car or something like that. When they start having regular expenses, that's when you get to open the door to say, all right, well, it's important that you start figuring out how much money is coming in and your normal expenses, so that you know, well, then how much of my income do I already have spoken for, right? And so that starts getting them into budgeting, and then you can help them steer them towards, a budgeting approach, hopefully the one that you're using, or a budgeting app, something like that. And from that point, you've laid the foundation of philosophy, you've helped them get the right habits, and then you've shown them through, or at least talked them through, here's how you manage income coming in and some of the expenses. And For me, I was very fortunate, I feel, because those regular kind of expenses started slow over maybe a 6-month time period, and then I moved out and I was on my own, and I had to manage more of them when I was in college. And then after college, then I was able and equipped to manage all of them. And so that slow progression I found wildly helpful looking back on it. Along the way, or typically at the point where this child has income and they're starting to have some responsibilities, that's also the time when you'd want to introduce them to outside resources to help shape their money view and their financial skills, because you're their parent and you've been instructing them their entire lives, and therefore, again, they're going to have this choice of, I'm going to do that because they told me, or I won't do that because they told me. So you're going to want to invite other influences into their life. And so Dave Ramsey, obviously, whether you believe and agree with all of his philosophy and approach or not, a lot of the bedrock stuff is just great foundation. And so they've got Financial Peace for Kids, whether that's a book or whether there's a course or some videos. I would be introducing your kids to that, typically in that late high school or early college, when, again, they've got some income and they've got some bills. That's the time when you want to expose them to that. We've got our own Financial Foundation series that we did a few years ago. It's going to need an update at some point. The concepts have not changed, but we'll need a refresher and more pieces to it. You'll find that right here on this YouTube channel in the playlist, Financial Foundations. It's just really short. Five series about what credit is and long-term savings, those sorts of things. And then also you'll want to connect them with some resources as well. I mentioned a budgeting app or budgeting resources. That's sort of a foundational one, a skill that everyone, I would argue, needs. And so hopefully at this late high school, early college, when they start having income but start having bills and responsibilities as well, you can point them on to those as well. And then lastly, of course, I'd be remiss, this is not self-serving, but at some point, you'll want to encourage your child to be connected to a financial professional, someone that is a fiduciary working in their best interest. Maybe not to hire a financial planner full-time from that point forward. They may not have the complexity in their financial life to need that, but even just an hour or two to help take those habits and really get them firmly implanted. And whether that is helping with, should you sign up for the Roth side of the 401k or pre-tax, how much should you contribute, what benefits decisions do you make up, teaching that 3 bank account system, ensuring that they understand the emergency fund and what that's for, delayed spending, and getting their insurance coverages in place, home and auto and rental insurance or whatever it is, might be worth at that point, graduating college or right around that time, to introduce them to a financial planner that can help them get the right habits built and kind of get on the right track. So that's the overall conversation, the approach, some sort of guiding principles around how to talk to your kids about money, when to do so, and again, work with your own financial advisor and financial planner. Ask them what approach they would take, and hopefully they can help you as well. So work with your CFP on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online. Korhorn.com, that's Korhorn with a K, wisemoneyshow.com, you can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.